Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 188 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL, and I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover radio show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, it's Super Bowl week, man. How are you doing?
I cannot do another day of listening to Super Bowl coverage and watching media day and listening to press conferences. I'm ready for the game. I can't believe it's only Wednesday. It feels like it should be Saturday by now. It feels like the game should be tomorrow. I happen to be off this week from work. It has been the slowest week of my life. No doubt about it. No ifs, ands, or buts. The slowest 3 days of my life, the last couple days here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the break in the film review and preview and all that stuff. I enjoyed having 2 weeks, but maybe a week and a half would be better because I am ready for this game to be played. I'm excited. I can't wait. And this is a little bit of a weird show for me because we're on the Eagles Pinpool Network feed, and I talk Eagles specifically in several shows on that feed, and this is the whole NFL show. And so I've been able all season to avoid repeating myself too much here because the Eagles are only a small part of what we talk about. But now, Mark, the Eagles are the whole NFL. It's all that's left. It's one game for the championship. The Eagles are the last line of defense to prevent the three-peat from the Chiefs. Man, let's dive into this game and break it down. We don't even have a format. I don't know what we're going to do, but it'll be a fun ride. So you guys that are watching live, be sure and drop comments with questions, and we'll try to address those as we go. But Mark, I'll kick it over to you first. Where do you want to go first in this game? What do you want to talk about?
I guess we could just talk. Where are you confidence level wise? I guess if we made a percentage chance that they're going to win the game, where are you right now as opposed to where you were Sunday night when, of the conference championships once the Chiefs won? Have you gotten more confident, less confident? I know you and Johnny have been doing a ton of film review, a ton of film study over there. Any kind of takeaways that have led you to more or less confidence?
This is kind of funny, but for our Patreon, for Johnny and I's Patreon, we did a all 22 rewatch of the AFC title game. And we just watched it live and talked about it. We didn't preview it and cut up plays. We just watched every play. And when we got to the end of the Chiefs offense versus the Bills defense, I watched that to learn about the Chiefs offense. And I ended up just walking away saying that the Bills should fire Sean McDermott. And then I watched the other side of the ball, and I was trying to learn about the Chiefs defense, and I walked away just saying the Bills need to fire Joe Brady. So I mostly just got really upset with the Bills and thinking their game plans were trash in that game, and there wasn't a lot of one-to-one comparison. But, I probably have backed off of how confident I was Sunday night, coming off of a 55-point NFC title game. But that's, just a little, when you win an NFC championship game by 30 points, you're walking on air. And I still feel good about the Eagles. It's hard to feel great about, facing Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in a playoff game. And especially if it becomes a close one. I mean, everybody knows the stat, 17 straight one-score game or 17 straight wins in one possession games. And the Eagles have certainly been a victim of that in Super Bowl 22. In the Super Bowl following the 2022 season. And so, I'm as confident as you can reasonably feel, I think, when Mahomes is your opponent in the playoffs.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think there's a lot of people projecting huge confidence in this game out in Philly media, and I just can't even wrap my head around how you could have full confidence going against the Chiefs, going against Patrick Mahomes, obviously back-to-back champs. There's a couple things that I kind of kept repeating to myself throughout the week to make me feel more confident. And one of those things is, we're going to talk a lot about gambling on this show for the non-gambling people out there. But the spread of this game sticks with me big time. The fact that we have a team in the Kansas City Chiefs that has won back-to-back titles, going for the first three-peat in NFL history. They have arguably the greatest player that's ever played the sport out there playing quarterback for them. They have Andy Reid, arguably one of the best coaches in the history of the sport. And they're only a 1.5 point favorite going for their third championship. The kind of the job of bookmakers when they're setting a line for people to bet is, it's not universally this, but for the most part, they want to get pretty close to equal action on both sides. They want, they want to set a line that entices people that would think either way to bet that spread. And they know that a lot of money and a lot of people are going to bet Kansas City. And this is really setting up as a classic kind of public versus pros game, which means every, Joe Square bettor out there that's, sitting at their job in their cubicle looks at Kansas City on the money line and they're only a 1.5 point favorite. I'll bet that minus 120. And the money is pouring in on Kansas City. The books are taking far more bets on Kansas City than they are Philly. Yet last night, DraftKings actually flipped the line from Eagles plus 1.5 to Eagles minus 0.5. And then it flipped back real quick over to plus 1.5 again, back to the Eagles. But the fact that everybody is betting the Chiefs, everybody's going to want to pick Kansas City, the team that's so easy to put your money on. And the books aren't budging, and the books are keeping the Eagles right there as pretty much a pick 'em in this game. And the smart bettors, the sharps out there, are absolutely hammering the Eagles in this game and keeping this line where it is. So that's kind of something, the sharps in Vegas are not in the interest of losing a ton of money. And the fact that the books are going to be rooting for the Eagles pretty heavily, I do think I keep telling myself the respect that the Eagles are getting by only being a 1.5 point dog, basically a pick 'em, is telling.
Yeah. If you think about the rosters in this game, obviously the Chiefs have an advantage at quarterback. If you go down the line, though, what other position groups would you say the Chiefs are better at?
Tight end.
Okay. Yeah. Tight end.
Center.
What? Yeah. What about like O-line as a whole, though? I'm taking the Eagles.
Absolutely.
So
and if you combine tight end to weapons with wide receiver, if you wanted to do wide receiver tight end, we obviously have them beat there.
Yeah. Edge, maybe Chiefs. Karlaftis is good. Karlaftis has come on really strong. So is Nolan Smith. I think maybe edge KC at edge rusher, defensive tackle. I honestly believe that Chris Jones and Jalen Carter are pretty equivalent, but the Eagles have much better depth. I would maybe give the Chiefs the edge at linebacker since Nakobe Dean is out. Like, I think that trio of Tranquil, Bolton, and Chenal has been really good for the Chiefs. Zach Bond's been incredible, but Oren Burks is his running mate now, who's played well for a backup, but without Dean, I would say maybe. So I would give the Chiefs linebacker and quarterback, maybe edge. The Eagles just have a much better roster, but it comes down to, it's Mahomes and Reed. And so I don't know how this game, I think this game is going to be such a good game. And I'm really excited. I can't wait to see it. We got Kev chiming in saying that he's in British bookmaking and it's pretty much a scratch in the UK. So there you go.
A question for you, I guess, just going over to the total a little bit. The total set at 48.5. Obviously 24-23 goes under, 27-24 goes over type of thing for people out there who aren't familiar. But do you think that the Eagles can win this game without scoring 24 points?
No.
That's also where I'm at. So I guess do you think it's going to be more of a shootout or kind of more of a grinded out type of game?
I think it'll be in that middle ground. I think if you get into a shootout, I don't love the Eagles' chances necessarily. But I don't think the Chiefs really have the horsepower for this to be a shootout either. I mean, the Chiefs scored over 30 points for the first time of the season in the AFC Championship game against what I can attest to watching all 22 of that game was a horrific game plan by the Bills. I feel like this is going to be in like the mid. I think it'll hit the over, but I don't think it's going to go over by a ton. I think you're talking scores in the mid to upper 20s, maybe, you get into the low 30s, but I don't think this is going to be like a fireworks type of game.
It is crazy though. For that number about the Chiefs, they've scored 27 or 26 plus in 11 games this year. So they've been between 26 to 32 points 11 times. I kind of think that's where we are. Like I predicted, for the sake of it, 38-35, flip the number and we win this time. But if you made me really guess, I think I'd probably say like 35-31. I really do think it's going to be a back and forth battle and a high scoring game. Maybe I'm a little swayed based on the last Super Bowl. Maybe I'm a little swayed based on, these last two conference championships, obviously 32-29 in the AFC and 55-23 in the NFC. So those were two overs that I bet and loved the last round. I actually don't have a bet on the Eagles to win this game or even to cover a spread in this game. I decided, I like we just said, I don't think the Eagles are winning this game without scoring 24 plus points. So instead of, and I think there's scenarios they lose the game scoring 24 plus points, but instead of betting the money line, instead of betting plus 1.5, I just bet Eagles team total over 23.5. And another one of those stats that I kind of keep telling myself a little bit to feel better about this game. And it's a stat I've given a lot on this show. The Eagles are 14-0 now when Jalen, Lane, and AJ start and finish a football game, and they average 29.5 points per game in those 14 games. 11 of those 14 games, they've scored 24-plus points. So it's a pretty darn safe bet that when Jalen Hurts, Lane Johnson, and AJ Brown all start and finish a game, you're going to score a lot of points. That's kind of just what we've seen over the full year. They've been an elite offense in those 14 games. 29.5 points per game is that's pretty darn elite right there. So I kind of keep telling myself that. The thing that scares me on the other end is kind of the 2-minute warning defense against Kansas City. We saw it obviously to close the half against Washington. We saw it the last couple minutes against the Rams. We've seen it multiple times throughout the year. Pick a game. Atlanta, Jacksonville drove towards the end of the game to try to win, and Nakobe makes a play in the end zone. But there's other games I'm forgetting. But if this is a close game where the Chiefs have the ball driving against our defense at the end of the game, whether that's to tie, whether that's to win, whatever the situation is, I don't have a ton of, or at the end of the half, I don't have a ton of faith in our defense to get that stop.
Yeah, I sent you this stat that was going around. I think it was Trey Wingo put this out, that since 2001, there have been 125 drives inside the final minute of the fourth quarter where the team who had the ball was trailing by 7 or less. 40% of those drives have ended in a game-winning or a game-tying score. So Tom Brady had 11 such drives in the postseason, and he scored on 6 of them. Drew Brees had 6 of those drives in the postseason and scored on 3. Patrick Mahomes is 7 of 7 in those situations in the postseason. And so, Mark, let me ask you this question. I'm spoiling a question that I'm going to ask on my preview show with Johnny and BLG tomorrow. So I'm not going to answer it, but I'm going to make you answer it right now. If you could pick right now, you're granted by a mystical football fairy superpowers, and you get to decide. They say, Mark, do you want the Eagles to be protecting a 6-point lead with 2 minutes left in the game, Chiefs ball, or do you want the Eagles offense to be trying to overcome a 6-point deficit with 2 minutes remaining? What do you take? You taking the ball in the deficit, or are you taking the points in the defense?
I'll take the points in the defense. I'll hope they can find one stop, kind of like the Rams situation, even though I don't have a lot of faith in them to get that stop. Getting a touchdown in under 2 minutes is so hard, and we haven't seen the offense really be put in that situation a lot of times this season. We've kind of had the salt leads away, not go chase a lead at the end. So I would take the defense. If you would have said down a field goal, I think I would have taken I take the ball down a field goal.
So you're telling me you think Jake Elliott can make a field goal?
That's a fair argument. That's a fair argument. I know, but yeah, let's say we get to the 25-yard line, we'll feel pretty good about it.
I'll still be scared, but yeah. So yeah, I hope this is not I hope this is a 10-point game late in the fourth quarter, because I really don't know if my nerves can take that one score game into the game situation. And, heaven forbid we end up with a flag in a crucial moment in the final minute of a game too, like in the last Super Bowl that the Eagles and the Chiefs played. I can't do that discourse again. Like, I need this game to be decided by players on the field, not by some ticky-tack flag that goes either direction. I don't want to win tainted by that either. So
Kev had a couple comments here, and I think it's a good thing to bring up, because a lot of talk about Dallas Goedert on all the gambling pods that I've listened to about the Super Bowl. He's actually the most bet prop out there, is Dallas Goedert over receiving yards. Chiefs have the worst record versus tight ends in the league, and most yards in the Superdome ever by a tight end happened this year. Dallas Goedert 170 yards early on in this season. And a fun fact about that, he said he ate a ton of beignets that week. So he said he's going to be eating a ton of beignets this week to get back in that mindset. Dallas Goedert was pretty funny at the media day stuff the other day. I thought he was one of him and Davante were probably my two favorite media day interviews that I watched from the Eagles. But I'm actually staying away from Goedert props. I feel like, and this is a dumb reason, I'll be honest, because Kev is right, and everybody's right to point it out that Kansas City's soft in that zone against tight ends in the middle of the field. But I do feel like every time people love Dallas Goedert to score or have a big game, he ends up being quiet that game from a gambling perspective. And also, I feel like every time that we all point out one thing in the Super Bowl and it's this prop that everybody's like, oh, we love this prop, I feel like it never even comes close. So part of me feels like Dallas Goedert has like 2 catches for like 20 yards in this game, and he doesn't come anything close to what we think. And it's just one of those things where it's like, oh, we talked all that about that matchup, and it ended up being AJ and Davante or whatever. So that's kind of just I don't have a great reason for not being on the Goedert props. A lot of people love them. You could find some really good reasoning behind it. I kind of think it's the guys on the outside that we're going to go to this game.
Well, let me give you a few more Dallas Goedert statistics here. This season on third downs, Jalen Hurts has targeted Dallas Goedert 14 times. He has completed 13 of those 14 passes for 8 first downs. And those 14 targets of Dallas Goedert on third down have resulted in a combined addition of 106.6 win probability across those 14 targets. That's the most of any quarterback pass catcher duo on third downs this season. Mark, how much win probability do you think the Eagles have added by targeting all other pass catchers combined on third downs?
Less than Goedert?
15%.
Wow.
So Dallas Goedert, big on third downs for the Eagles. And a couple more here. Dallas Goedert averages 2.2 yards per route run from 11 personnel this season, which is the second most among qualifying tight ends. He's also very impactful in the run game because the Eagles average 6.3 yards per carry with him on the field compared to 4.9 without him on the field. So Goddard's big in the pass game, especially on those money downs. And of course, we saw him put a game away in New Orleans with a clutch third down reception and a huge run earlier this season. And he's a huge factor in the run game as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely, and I know that there's another stat out there. Let me pull this up so I'm not just talking out of turn. Another guy who I've seen a lot of love for when it comes to the gambling, if we're staying on the Eagles, the Eagles receiving props here, Devontae Smith has really torn up the Chiefs. If you look at going against the Jags defense, the Spags defense, each of the last 2 times that he's faced them, he 6+ catches in all 3 games that he's played against him, 99+ yards in all 3 games. Couldn't he just get 100 in that one to make it 100+ yards in all 3? And 2+ explosive plays in all 3 games, 2 touchdowns in those 3 out of those 3 games. So there's a lot of love for Devontae out there. I do think it's Devontae and AJ, and I think you can get this Chiefs secondary. We were just going through all of the position groups. Could you make a case outside of Saquon that the biggest gap in the game is the secondary of the Eagles to the Chiefs secondary? I think D-line and linebacker are close.
Running back.
I said outside of Saquon. Yeah. Saquon.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely the biggest gap.
Or receivers.
I might give the nod to the secondary being, well, I guess it depends if we're doing receiver, tight end, or receivers. Yeah, I guess.
If you're just doing receivers, it's receivers because Trent McDuffie's really good. And the Chiefs just don't have anything really at receiver.
They give up a lot of explosive plays in the passing game. Their explosive play margin, I wish I had these stats right in front of me. The Chiefs' explosive play margin is not great. And I know that the main takeaway that everybody's going to have from that stat is that why doesn't this Mahomes, they're minus 16 entering the Super Bowl in explosive play margin while the Eagles are plus 47. So people are going to look at that stat and say, oh, well, why aren't the Chiefs making big plays on offense? What happened to the Mahomes offense we used to watch? I kind of look at that and say, well, the Chiefs must be giving up a good amount of big plays on the other side of the ball. And I feel like the eye test kind of agrees with that. And I think if we're going to see big plays in this game, it's actually, and I know everyone's going to think Saquon, I think it's more likely to big plays to AJ and Devontae. We saw AJ on that go ball on fourth down last week. I think we see a couple of those shots down the field to AJ and Devontae.
Yeah, the Chiefs play a lot of press coverage too. They play a lot of press coverage. They've played it on almost half their snaps in the postseason. And A.J. Brown dominates against press coverage. He has the highest target share and yards per route run among receivers with at least 100 pressed routes this season. And so I do think you're right. I think it could be an A.J. Brown game downfield. And it's tough when you have the number one cornerback for the Chiefs is Trent McDuffie, a guy that I loved coming out of college, loved him in the draft. A lot of people didn't like him in the draft. And the people
I liked him didn't love him.
Yeah. A lot of people that didn't like him was because they thought he would be slot limited because of his size. And he has been able to kick outside some this year, but there's only so much you can do as a 5'11 cornerback against A.J. Brown and press coverage without safety help over the top. And so I do think that's a big thing to watch for when the Eagles have the ball. Being able to get some of those explosive plays could go a long way towards, determining this matchup. And you look on the other side for the Chiefs and they just don't have that. They make the trade for Xavier Worthy and he's lightning fast, but since week 13 of the season, he's only averaged 4.8 air yards per target. And Mahomes has thrown the ball behind the line of scrimmage on 27% of his passes, which is the second highest rate in the NFL. And the Eagles defense has allowed the lowest success rate, 29.9% on passes behind the line of scrimmage this season. And so the Chiefs are a team that wants to just get the ball out fast. They're very RPO oriented. They're sending Worthy in motion a lot and throwing it out to him on those fly motions. They're, the little hook routes, the little curl routes to Travis Kelce over the middle of the field. And the Eagles have been pretty good in those situations this season. Now the Chiefs are going to test that in a way that nobody else really has. But the Chiefs have not really tried to push the ball downfield. They have played for third and medium this season, and they've been really good on third and medium. But that's where this game is going to be decided, I think, is how the Eagles defense handles these third and short, third and medium situations.
And I think the thing we differ on here in this game is and the reason that I really wish this was Buffalo now looking at it, I think you look at how good the Eagles run defense has been in most of the games that they've played this year. And I think if you're the Chiefs, I think they're going to realize quickly that the way to have an efficient run game is actually just the short passing game against the Eagles. I think they're going to take every 3-yard out, 4-yard in, 5-yard drag, slants, ins across the middle. I think they're going to take those 3 to 5 yard chunks and hope that they can make them 7 to 10 yard chunks. And that, like you said, even if that just gets you to third and short or second and short, I think that's the way they're going to attack it. Two of the bets I like is actually Isaiah Pacheco, under 22.5 rush yards and under 8.5 for his longest rush of the game. Both of those have cashed in 3 of the last 4 games. He's been super inefficient with his carries, 5 carries for 12 yards. I know Shane said he had, I think, only a 20% success rate in that game against Buffalo. The Kareem Hunt, who is also washed, has fully passed him over as kind of their lead back. And they tried to run the ball a ton against Buffalo last week, and they weren't terrible, but they weren't very good either. When Kareem, I think it was 17 for 64, but against Houston, when the run game wasn't really working, they kind of just abandoned to it and went to the passing game, especially in the second half to close down the game. I kind of think they're going to be taking those chunk plays and not having a lot of teams. You figure, we make them go 10 to 15 plays, they're going to make a mistake. There's going to be a penalty. There's going to be an interception, or quarterback makes a bad throw, whatever the case, they're going to make a mistake. The Chiefs just don't make a ton of mistakes. That's the thing that worries me. And I know that we've been good at those, behind the line of scrimmage passes and stopping those. We rallied to the ball. Cooper DeJean has been unbelievable at it all year long. But I just think the Chiefs are different. And I think that the way they're able to scheme things is different. And we saw it, in the red zone last Super Bowl and with that motion. And you hope Vic Fangio has more of a, adjustment for those types of things than Gannon did in that game. But I just get concerned that they're going to eat us alive on, 5-yard passes. And part of that is Travis. And I think Travis is going to have a big game. I think it's hard to see him not having a big game. I have him over 62.5 receiving yards. I'm not betting these, but I would bet over 62.5 receiving yards and touchdown plus 135. He was held quiet against Buffalo after 7 for 117 and a touchdown against Houston. I don't see it happening twice in a row, mainly because it hasn't happened twice in a row in the last 5 years. He hasn't had 2 straight games under 62 yards since when they won their first Super Bowl and had Tyreek Hill around. He's went 63 plus in 9 of 18 games this season, so still half the time. And he's had 71 plus yards in 14 of his last 15 playoff games, with last round against Buffalo being the first one of the last 5 years that he didn't have that. He had 6 for 81 and a touchdown against us last time we met. Ertz obviously just had the 11 for 104 against our defense. I think you see a pretty similar kind of outing from Travis.
Yeah. Boo.
Yeah.
I do think, when people talk about Zach Ertz, what he did in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles, he had a really good day. But I do think that's a little bit different because you were worried about Terry McLaurin, who is a legit wide receiver. And I just don't think the Chiefs have that. And so I do think you can devote a little more attention to Travis Kelce. And the Eagles linebackers have been really good against tight ends this season, the fewest yards per target this season when covering tight ends. However, one part of that, duo that made up the starting battery for the Eagles at linebacker is out in this game, and Nakobe Dean. And Oren Burks has played well in his relief, but he's definitely not as good as Nakobe Dean was. And so that's something to keep an eye on as well. Another thing to keep an eye on is the edge rushers in this game. We mentioned George Karlaftis earlier, and George Karlaftis has really come on over the second part of the season. So too has Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith has generated 13 pressures across his 3 playoff games, which is the most of any defender this postseason. And since week 15, Nolan Smith has generated 23 pressures, which is the most among all Eagles defenders. And so Nolan Smith is not a household name for non-Eagles fans. George Karlaftis is not a household name for non-Eagle or for non-Chiefs fans, but these are 2 guys that are playing at a high level right now on the edge. And, Jalen Carter will get all the press in the middle for the Eagles, and Chris Jones rightly will get all the press for the Chiefs, but Karlaftis and Nolan Smith could have potential big impacts in this game.
Yeah, my second favorite bet of the entire Super Bowl, and everybody knows if they followed before, my favorite bet is Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown, with the best bet in sports. But my favorite non-Jalen Hurts touchdown bet would be Nolan Smith to get a half sack. That was at plus money earlier in the week to get over 0.25 sacks. And now it's at minus 110 or minus 115, I forget, but still a really bettable number. I really like that prop to at least get a half of a sack. He's gotten a sack in 5 of the last 6 games, 6 sacks in that stretch, 8 sacks in the last 10 games. I think he's, at this point, he's a top edge rusher going into next year. Like 15.
Man. Yeah, I think that's
10?
fair.
might be fringe top 10 going into next year. And the fact that he's this good this early, we've talked about it. I thought he'd be more of a project. I was more skeptical than you about him being able to stay on the field consistently against the run, despite how good he was in college against the run. He's proven every kind of doubt anyone could have had, or every doubt that the GMs clearly had with him falling all the way to 30, totally wrong. And him being this good by the end of his second year, honestly, if you look across the entire team outside of the rookies, it might be the biggest development year to year, or kind of just like the biggest kind of development that the Eagles had this season going forward, that you can be like, all right, this guy improved and this guy is an even more core part of the core. And Nolan Smith is very much like one of the 5 to 7 most important players on this team going forward over the next couple years. And I think seeing what he's been able to do just by the end of his second year, and obviously having the best stretch of his life over the last however many games you want to, 4, 6, 10 games, however long you want to make that stretch. I don't know if there is a ceiling for Nolan Smith. Like, what's to stop him from coming a full-on all-pro edge rusher in the next couple of years? Like, I'm done kind of putting a ceiling on this guy. I think he could be legitimately one of the best defensive linemen or edge rushers in the sport.
Yeah, Nolan Smith was number 16 on my big board back in the draft, and it was just because of his, which I've maybe changed how I look at athleticism a little bit over the last couple of drafts. Thank you, Anthony Richardson. But
quarterback is a different thing.
Yeah. But I valued his athlete. It was the same reason I was so high on Jordan Davis too, was he was super athletic and also had a clearly defined role as a good run stuffer. And that's kind of what I thought about Nolan Smith. And it didn't make sense that he can stuff the run as well as he does at his weight. It still doesn't. But seeing him develop as a pass rusher has been huge.
I was kind of, it's funny that I was kind of the opposite of Nolan, because I was so bullish on his athleticism. I was like, he's going to get to the quarterback. Like, he's DeAndre Hopkins as an edge rusher. Like, basically, if you look at his kind of height and build, like, he's just such a freak that I thought he'd almost just be a pass rush Hassan Reddick type specialist once he got to the league. But him being able to stay on the field for pretty much every snap, and even the leadership qualities he shows next to Jalen Carter and how much he's able to help Jalen Carter out. It's just those two guys are helping each other out so much inside, outside, bouncing the quarterback either to the outside of Nolan or to the inside of Jalen. I think, that's the core on that defense. The last 2 years, how he got the 4 most important players on the defense going forward in the last 2 seasons, with Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith in the 2023 draft, and with Quinyon and Cooper DeJean in the 2024 draft. I mean, it's hard to believe just how much Howie's nailed his top 2 picks the last 2 years, and they're reaping the benefits during this playoff run for all 4 guys.
Yeah, I mean, you can even go back a little further and expand it a little more than that if you want to.
AJ.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. AJ Brown. But that was 2021.
Wouldn't that have been 22? That was the same year they drafted Davis, right?
Yeah. So here's how they've spent first round picks for here's how they've spent day 1 and 2 picks. 2021, Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, Milton Williams.
Bang.
Hit. 2022, Jordan Davis, AJ Brown, Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean.
I'd say Jordan Davis is a bad pick at this point, given how many snaps he's playing. Everything else is great.
Yeah, 2023, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Tyler Steen, Sidney Brown. Not
to mention Tanner McKee and Moro Ojomo in the 6th and 7th round. I think those are legitimately good picks for at this.
Oh yeah. And then 2024, of course, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalix Hunt. Jalix Hunt has had to play a lot of snaps, and you can throw in Kenny Gainwell as a 5th round pick, being a great pick, and Grant Calcaterra as a 6th round pick, and Keely Ringo as a 4th round pick, who hasn't played a lot, but I still think it's a great pick. So Howie's definitely been on a heater.
Even Tyler Steen stepping into big spots recently, obviously in the playoff run, and not offense, not skipping a beat when he's been out there. So hopefully we don't have to see him in the Super Bowl, but still.
We've got comments coming in on Twitter here complimenting It says nice
Definitely
beards.
yours.
The beard is great. I'm gonna feed my ego and say they're talking about mine, not yours, Mark.
Definitely. Mine's gone. Mine's a shell of itself.
Mine needs to be gone, but it's got to wait till after the Super Bowl now. So I did not thread the needle. I needed to get my beard trimmed before the playoff run started, and I messed around and didn't do it. And now it just has to wait. So
I want to get to Saquon, but I forgot to bring this up when we were talking about AJ and how I think that you can beat this team deep and they play a lot of press. I don't think the safeties are particularly, amazing in coverage. Like I really do think you can beat them deep. For that reason, give me AJ Brown touchdown at plus 180. One of my favorite bets here in the Super Bowl. He scored in 4 of the last 6 games coming in here, 5 of the last 8 of the last 15. He scored in 4 of his 8 playoff games. And obviously in his only Super Bowl appearance, got a touchdown, had 6 for 96. And I'm only betting the touchdown prop. I'm not betting his receptions or yards because, he could have a 2-catch 90-yard game. So that you bet the receptions and he goes over the yards. You bet the yards, he goes over the receptions. I don't want to put myself in that box, so I'm just taking the touchdown. But what I will say, and I think my biggest kind of take about this game is I think it has a chance to be the AJ Brown game where we walk out of it. Maybe AJ gets, 7 for 100 and a touchdown or 2. Maybe Jalen doesn't put up a huge game statistically. Maybe doesn't get any touch pushes. Maybe Saquon doesn't put up a huge game statistically. And then I think you're looking at a chance where AJ Brown 35-1 to win the Super Bowl MVP is worth a look. He's obviously a household name enough. The inner excellence stuff, maybe they cut to him on the sideline reading the book as the Chiefs are down 7, trying to drive to win the game or something. I don't know. But I think I really do think there's a chance that AJ Brown kind of cements himself with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase as one of the truly, truly top receivers in the sport on the biggest stage. Because, the last time we saw him on the biggest stage, 6 for 96 and a touchdown, he wouldn't have won MVP in that game. But I think there's a chance AJ is kind of the biggest takeaway coming out of this game.
Yeah, I saw the thing going around on Twitter that AJ Brown has more Super Bowl appearances than Treylon Burks, which is who the Titans used to that first round pick for, has receiving touchdowns in his career. So yikes, bad look there for the Titans. But you mentioned you wanted to get into Saquon. So how do you think the Chiefs approach this? Do you think they really stack up the box and try to take Saquon away? Do you think they play a little more balance? What's the approach? What kind of a day do you think Saquon has?
Yeah, I think they're going to try to take Saquon away, at least early in the game, which I think is going to force the Eagles to kind of do what they did last week, starting the game outside of the long Saquon rush, but have kind of those quick strikes and those bootlegs and those plays to Dallas Goedert that we talked about. Hopefully I'm wrong about my take earlier about the props. But something I did see is over the last 6 games, the Chiefs are allowing over 5 yards per rush and 147 rush yards per game. So they're obviously a really good run stuffing defense. Haven't allowed, I think it's a 100-yard rusher, yada, 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 all that stuff. I do think Saquon gets to 100, probably gets to like 110, 120. I do think that prop is set pretty perfectly right around in the one teens. I guess, what are you expecting from Saquon? Do you think he's productive on the day? Do you think he's, historic like he's been the last couple weeks? Or is KC going to be able to kind of take him out of the game and neutralize him a bit?
I think he's going to be historic because he only needs 30 yards to be historic. That'll put him passing Terrell Davis for the most rushing yards in a season, including the playoffs. So I think that's going to happen. This postseason, he's been really good rushing outside the tackles. He's had 9.3 yards per carry. The Chiefs have been more susceptible to runs between the tackles, though. And so I think that the strength of the Eagles' run game is getting outside, especially with pullers with Saquon Barkley. And the Chiefs have been a little more gettable up the middle. And so I don't think that Saquon is going to I don't think he's going to go rush for 165 yards or something like that. But I do expect him to have a good game. And I expect the Eagles to really lean into the run in this game because you want to stay out of those situations where Steve Spagnuolo can dial up some of his exotic pressures. We've seen in the postseason the Eagles check into a run for Saquon on a play where I think it was the Packers had two linebackers walked up over the right guard and the right tackle. And it's pancake city, and he houses one from 60 yards out. And you can do that on early downs. You can do it on 3rd and short. I think the Eagles are going to make a very concerted effort to stay out of 3rd and long in this game. And I think that's going to lead to a lot of early down runs.
What would be your predicted line for Saquon in the game?
Say he goes say he goes 25 carries for 140 yards.
And
a touchdown.
Yeah, I think I said 25 for 120 and a touchdown, so not too far off at all. I do think it's going to be – I don't think it's going to be a 200-plus game, I guess I should say. And I do think that you're probably going to need 220-plus combined from Jalen.
Yeah. Yeah. We got a comment here from Enreal on YouTube asking if you think there's a chance that the Eagles would trade any of their young defenders for Myles Garrett, like Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, or Nolan Smith. Krabby Oldman said, good question. I heard someone saying Howie will look into it, but probably not spend big or trade away good talent. Mark, you gave me the double thumbs down. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I've been arguing with my buddies who want to trade our next 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett, and I totally disagree with the cap situation we're going to be in. We need to pay all these guys we just nailed in the draft. You got to keep replacing guys with 4-year, 5-year cost-controlled guys that we control for their entire first contract. And with how good Howie has been, like we just laid out in the draft, not just the last 2 years, but the last few years, I think that you can't give up those picks. And someone said 2 first-round picks. I think that's probably what it's going to cost to get Myles Garrett. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be us, but I think it'll be like a Chicago or a Denver. I don't know who it'll be, but
Washington.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of the teams floated that have rookie quarterbacks. So I even heard maybe New England gives their first and second this year instead of 2 firsts because their second will be a high pick. I don't know, but I wouldn't want to give those 2 firsts up, and I even more than that would not want to give up any of the 4 names that we've drafted in the last 2 years with Carter and Smith and Quinyon and DeJean. I don't think that's even a thought for Howie. And you look at Howie's track record, Howie very rarely gets rid of his guys. When he has a draft pick that works out, Howie keeps his guys. If you look at the guys that Howie's let go, it's guys that he's brought in after they were drafted by another team, or guys like Miles Sanders who were products of the environment, or guys like Sayamalu who just got overpaid a little bit and he couldn't kind of justify keeping him around. It's very rare. If you go through the successful Howie picks, he almost always pays those guys a second contract.
Yeah. Sadly, that trend is probably going to be broken for Milton Williams this offseason, but
it does seem that way.
He's played his way out of what the Eagles can afford to pay him. But that's kind of my thought on that as well, that I don't think there's any chance the Eagles would give up 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett. I just don't think that's something they would do, period.
Is there any chance you could tag Milton Williams? It's just not worth it at all.
I can look up what the franchise.
It's going to be a high number. Yeah, it's going to be a high number.
It'll be too big. Yeah.
It's probably like 20 mil.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
There's a comment from Dives, Mark, asking if I saw if Oasis is going to be in New Jersey in September. I will be there. I have not gotten tickets yet. I'm waiting just to make sure I'm not gone for work, but I will be at one of. They're doing 2 shows. I think it's Labor Day weekend. I will be there.
$22.1 million.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. Yeah, I don't know. I wish you could figure out a way. Maybe Howie's a wizard. I don't know. Maybe you figure out a way to tag him for 1 year instead of signing up for a long-term deal that locks you in. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, probably.
I think he's walking. Milton Williams or Zach Bond?
Oh, well, Bond. Not even close.
Yeah. Milton Williams and Mekhi Becton or Zach Bond?
Bond. Back the O-line thing, for me, I kind of feel like you could, I think Shane could probably log some pretty good snaps if Stoutland had 6 months with him.
Who else is an Eagles pending free agent right now?
Those are the big ones, right?
Isaiah Rodgers.
Is Chauncey locked in for next year?
Yeah, he's in for another year.
Okay.
Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham. Okay. Josh Sweat, Mekhi Becton, and crap, who were we talking about?
Milton.
And Milton Williams or Zach Bond?
I'd still say Bond.
Zach Bond or every other free agent the Eagles have.
Bond. We'll figure it out.
That's pretty much where I'm at too. I will be devastated if Zach Bond gets away in free agency.
I had a big take on radio this week that, in my opinion, Howie Roseman is not just the most valuable person in Eagles history, but I'd say in the last 45 years, I can't speak pre-1980. I don't know about the Flyers winning titles in the 70s. And you can obviously pretty much only speak to the Eagles here. I think Howie Roseman's the most valuable person in the last 45 years of Philadelphia sports as a whole. When you look at the fact that he was the GM and the architect for a Super Bowl team, the only team in franchise history, 2 more teams that have made appearances, potentially maybe a second championship, as the architect of a second entirely new era of Eagles team. I don't think there's anybody else even close to as valuable as Howie Roseman is. But if he doesn't pay Zach Bond, I'll be picketing his offices. He can count on that. I gave him all that credit, but I'll take it all away if you don't pay Zach Bond.
So all the nice things you just said about Howie Roseman, would you trade Howie Roseman for Myles Garrett?
Absolutely not. I'm not even joking. I would not trade Howie Roseman for any player in the NFL.
All right, there you go.
I really wouldn't. I think he's that valuable.
All right.
Another real quick, sorry, because we're in a tangent show here. Another question that I asked on radio this week. If the Eagles, let's say the Giants would have kept Saquon, and the Eagles couldn't have gotten Saquon, what would the strategy at running back have been this year? Would it have been you go get Josh Jacobs or Derrick Henry or Aaron Jones or one of the other guys who was on the market, and Howie just thought, the running back market's gotten out of whack. It's time to zig when others zag. And if they didn't get Saquon, it just would have been someone else. Would they have had to make a pick in the first or second round? And that would have blown the Quignon-DeJean pair that we all have come to know and love. Would they have just fully kind of rolled with Kenny Gainwell and just said, here you go, like we're going to roll with you, and maybe you bring a Swift type back or something like that? What do you or was it just a scenario where Howie was like, this Saquon guy is so special and I've watched him up close and personal, I have to do whatever it takes to get this guy? Or was it the running back market is out of whack? I'm curious. You'd never get a real answer on that from Howie. He would always just say we wanted Saquon. But What do you think? What would they have done if Saquon signed with the Giants this offseason?
I think they would have signed like a low-level free agent and went into the season with Kenny Gainwell as their starter, and then whoever the free agent was, and Will Shipley.
Yeah. No, that might have been what it is. Maybe I don't know, maybe Aaron Jones. I don't know what he ended up getting paid, or DeAndre Swift actually got a little more than I think they would have given him. But yeah, I think it's curious. I'd be curious to see if it would have been Derrick Henry or if it would have been Josh Jacobs. Obviously, Howie nailed it, hit a home run there, making it Saquon, who makes less than Gabe Davis. But obviously, we don't need to give Howie any more props for the Saquon contract. I think he's gotten more than his fair share. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I was trying to look and see what running backs signed for last year now. Jacobs got $12 million a year. Swift got $8 million a year.
Yeah.
Pollard $7 million. Singletary $5.5 million. I think they would have done the Derrick Henry deal, $8 million a year. Saquon was $12.5.
Yeah.
So I could have seen him doing the Derrick Henry deal. I could have seen him doing.
I know Aaron Jones is a free agent already again, so I think his was only like a 1-year commitment.
Yeah, 1 year, $7 million.
It could have been that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just an interesting kind of hypothetical, because obviously everyone's given Howie a ton of credit on kind of zagging when everybody else zigged on the running back market. I wonder if it's a running back market thing or if it was a Saquon thing. Would it have just been Henry? But I think I unloaded all the props here. I gave the Pacheco props. I gave the AJ props, Jalen Hurts touchdown, Nolan Smith sack, the props that I'm not betting with the Kelsey and the over. One last one. This is just a weird one. Zach Bond under 10.5 tackles. He's only had 11 plus tackles in one of the last 6 games, and it was last game. Only 8 of 19 games this year. I don't think the Chiefs are going to run the ball a ton in this game. So I kind of love that stat. I'm not going to bet on that because it feels like a weird thing to root for in the Super Bowl when one of my favorite teams in it. But if you're out there listening and you're not an Eagles or a Chiefs fan, I kind of think Zach Bond under 10.5 tackles might be worth a sniff. Just like any team to score 30 plus in the game at plus money might be worth a sniff.
Yeah. All right. Last question here. Krabby Oldman asks, could Derrick Henry have had the same kind of year Barkley has had here?
Less runs, probably more consistency.
Yeah. Barkley's better than Henry at this stage of his career. But I mean, I think Henry was great in Baltimore. I think he would have been good here too.
I think he probably would have had more 5 to 6 yard carries and less 1 to 2 yard carries that Saquon. You know, Saquon does have those kind of stretches where you get 7 carries for 14 yards for a stretch, but then you get the 75-yard run, which he does so much more than Henry. That I think that is just so valuable out of the running back position and being able to create explosive plays that don't have the risk of an interception. Yeah, I think Saquon has a better year, but I think Henry would have had probably like 90% of the season.
Yeah. All right. Well, Mark, anything else that you need to unload on here? Do you want to make a score prediction? How do you want to round this thing out?
I'll go 38-35. I'll go with my AJ Brown goes nuts MVP take. And I'll say that we're up 7 points with 5 minutes to go, and the Chiefs go right down the field, score a touchdown, tie the game. We get the ball back with 1:30. Jalen Hurts takes us all the way down to the 20. There's a nice run in there from Jalen. We're getting deep now. A nice run in there from Jalen to get us into field goal range. And Jake hits a field goal that looks like it's tailing out the whole time and sneaks right inside the upright. And we win the Super Bowl as time expires, 38-35.
Off the upright.
Off the upright and in. Imagine that. He doinks it in.
Yeah. Oh. All right. Here we go. I got to try my hand then. So the Eagles get the ball back down 7 with like 3 minutes left. And they drive down the field and they score a touchdown to tie the game with like 12 seconds left. And then they line up and go for 2. And they win the game on a 2-point conversion that if they lose it, everybody would be yelling to fire Nick Sirianni. But they win on a 2-point conversion.
Do you think you should do that with the overtime rules the way they are?
It probably depends on game flow for me, which is a very non-analytics answer. But in a 21-21 game, I'm taking that to overtime and trusting my defense probably.
But if you've given up a ton throughout the game and it's 35-35, you'll go for it. Yeah.
I'll tell you for dang sure in the last Super Bowl, I would have done it. I wouldn't have taken it to overtime with a defense that hadn't got to stop.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I was wondering, do you think Nick would have the balls to do it?
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's such a risky thing to do, and no one's going to blame you for going to overtime, really, but it's one of those things.
Yeah. Krabby Oldman chimed in here and said that this is random. With the win in the NFC title game, the Eagles are 666 and 665.
Oh, no.
Their first time
666 and 666. It's a double number. That's terrible.
First time above 500 since they were 3-3 in 1933. All right. My final stat I want to drop on you, Mark. Quinyon Mitchell in the postseason. What do you think his passer rating when targeted is this postseason?
0.00.
For context, if you just spiked the ball every play, that's a 39.8 passer rating. So
39.8. Give me that.
It's 2.8.
Oh my God. I should have stayed with my 0.0. You ruined it with that. you swayed me off. That's not fair.
15 targets, 5 receptions for 24 yards, 4 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions.
He's the man.
On the entire season, he has allowed only 1.5 yards after catch. That is 0.4 yards fewer per catch than the next closest cornerback in Patrick Surtain.
And the funny thing about Quinyon, I had a buddy the whole year. How many picks did Quinyon drop this season?
Lot.
So many picks he dropped that he would have won Defensive Rookie of the Year if he would have just caught some picks this season. But My buddy was like, it's a good thing he's the best corner I've ever seen in an Eagles jersey because he's got the worst hands I've ever seen from a corner. And I don't know if you're a Happy Gilmore fan, but him catching all these interceptions last week, I called my buddy as he made the final one against Washington, and I was like, Quinyon learned how to catch. Uh-oh. Like, that's how quarterbacks should feel across the league, watching Quinyon actually catch these interceptions. He is just going to be I don't know if there's a corner in the league that I would take for the next 5 to 10 years over Quinyon. I know Surtain's really good, but at this point, he's probably, 26, 27. Where Quinyon is at his age, I'll take him over Sauce after Sauce's rough year. I'll take him over Stingley. I'll take him over McDuffie after a couple years in. He's a little bigger than McDuffie. I love Quinyon Mitchell, watching that guy play every week. And then obviously watching DeJean step up and make the tackles he makes and do what he does in the slot. It's like, how many times during the offseason did I complain and ask for young corners? It was all I did all offseason. I was so tired of young corners. And for them to bring in the 2 best young corners I've ever seen wearing Eagles jersey is just, we're spoiled. Thank you,
Howie. He's actually not that much older than Patrick Surtain. Less than a year.
Wow. Okay. Then Surtain was really young when he came out.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
He's Surtain is 280 days older.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, he's got to be in the conversation though for top corners in the league after doing this his rookie year.
For sure. Well, shout out to everybody. Mark, do you want to drop a score prediction or no?
38-35 Eagles.
All right, 38-35 Eagles. I got 28-24 Eagles. So there you have it, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this episode number 188 of Chalk Talk, and thank you for following along with our coverage this season. If you enjoy what you heard on this show, and we know that you do, hit that subscribe button to the Eagles Pinpool Network wherever you stream your podcast. You're going to catch Mark and I throughout the offseason on the Armchair Scouts on this same feed. We're going to be doing all of our position rankings and everything. So be sure you're buckled up and ready for that. You can follow us on the meantime on Twitter. I am at Shane Half NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. And we will catch you guys next time. Go Birds.